Hello and welcome back to another TED Talks watch party. My name is Ikey. I'm the digital curator here at TED, and I will be your host for what should be a pretty spectacular time. So as usual, we love to start these things off by asking, where's everyone tuning in from? I'm here in New York City, and I think it's always fun to hear where our incredibly wonderful and global audience is tuning in from. So if you're around, watching, excited for these 4 parenting talks, be sure to drop in the live chat where you are tuning in from. So today we will be hearing from 4 spectacular speakers all about parenting, and we could not be more excited to share these 4 talks with you. I'll read them off, and then we'll see where people are tuning in from in the chat. So first off, we'll have Lenore Skenazy. Her talk is called Why You Should Spend Less Time with Your Kids. Next, we have Hajar Sharif, How to Use Family Dinner to Teach Politics. After that, we'll follow that up with Joelle Leone, The Beautiful Hard Work of Co-Parenting. And last but not least, we'll have Dr. Becky Kennedy talking about the single most important parenting strategy. All right, that is going to be one amazing lineup. We're really excited to have these 4 incredible talks here. I'm really excited to have you hang out with us and watch these talks. So be sure to chat amongst yourself in the live chat. We have one of my wonderful colleagues monitoring that. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in there. And when we come back after the first talk, we'll see where people are tuning in from. We'll talk more about this talk itself, maybe ask a question to the audience, and we'll kind of just keep that rolling throughout the rest of the program. So once again, 4 amazing talks on parenting. Feel free to drop any questions, comments, or suggestions in the live chat. And without further ado, let's jump to the first talk, and we'll see where everyone's tuning in from when we get back.
I am here to talk about parenting, which is kind of weird because if you Google America's Worst Mom, you find me there for 22 Google pages, followed by America's Worst Mother's Day Gift, which, guys, a lot of you here, we don't want an iron and lingerie is for Father's Day. So how do you get a name like that? Well, years ago, when our younger son was 9, he started asking me and my husband if we would take him someplace he'd never been before in New York City, where we live, and let him find his own way home by subway. So we talked about it, me and my husband, who you never hear of as America's worst dad. And we decided, sure. Long story short, I wrote a newspaper column, Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone. And 2 days later, I was on the Today Show, MSNBC, Fox News, and NPR. Fox News and NPR, okay? Kind of wild. And I realized that a lot of you would not make the same decision, obviously, but you should have seen our son. He came into the apartment levitating. He was so happy. So I want you to think back for just a second on something that you absolutely loved doing as a kid, maybe flashlight tag, building forts. And now I want you to raise your hand if your mom knew exactly where you were. Okay, it's an older crowd here. Sorry. It is usually the younger people who raise their hands because that's what's changed. In fact, that's what I wrote my book about, free-range kids. For the last generation or 2, kids have been getting so little time on their own, so little time unsupervised. And of course, some of that's good, togetherness is good. Kids need a strong bond. But, too much is driving us all crazy. There was the Surgeon General report from 2021, which a lot of you probably saw. It said that kids are more depressed and anxious than ever, right? And then he came out with a report like 2 years later, and it said parents are more depressed and anxious than ever. I'm like, yeah, because we need our space, right? The olden days were not perfect. But back then, there were 3 worlds that were absolutely perfectly balanced. There was the kid world filled with, bikes and adventures and playing, and the adult world, so boring. People were always talking about politics and who was having a procedure. a lot of polyps. And then there was Family World when everyone was together, like on vacation or at dinner. But now they've all been sort of mashed up together, and especially since phones, because now even when parents aren't physically with their kids, they can be texting and talking and tracking to them. So the worlds are not in balance anymore. Fortunately, the reason I'm here is that there is a sort of easy way to start teasing the worlds apart again. And it just begins with a little bit of deprogramming. So here goes. We have to realize that we've been sort of brainwashed into believing that anytime our kids aren't with us, they're in terrible danger of being kidnapped by a guy in a white van looking for his puppy, or, also tragic, not getting into Harvard. and as a result, terrible, I don't even like to think about it. But the upshot is that we are spending way more time with our kids than our parents spent with us, usually helping them do things that they could do on their own. And I call it the adult takeover of childhood, because it's so vast that the University of Michigan did a study 2 years ago, and they found that parents want to give their kids independence. They recognize its importance. But the majority of parents of kids age 9 to 11, which is tweens, right? Kind of old, will not let them play at the park with a friend, will not let them walk to a friend's house. And if they're at the store shopping together, only 50% will let their kid go to another aisle. Okay, that's the real statistic. That's University of Michigan. So sending your kid for a can of peas is like sending them to NAM, okay? It's just crazy. We got to get braver than that. We got to get brave enough to send our kids to the canned food aisle or to the park before their voice changes. So how? Well, I've got 2 helpful facts and 3 solutions. Helpful fact 1 is this. Your kid is not going to be kidnapped, okay? If for some reason you wanted them to be snatched off the street by a stranger, statistically, how long would you have to keep them outside? 750,000 years, okay? It's a while. And after the first 100,000, they're not even kids anymore. They're not even cute. They're like dust. Fact 2 is that when our kids aren't with us, and all our teachable moments, they're actually learning more. And let me explain. When adults organize a game, we are efficient, right? We decide what they're going to play and whether the ball was in or out and who gets a trophy, which is easy because everyone, right? But when kids are organizing a game, it is a total mess. Especially if you got like a bunch of kids of different ages, like the Peanuts gang. Well, they have to decide what they're going to play. And then they have to make the teams kind of even, a lot of negotiating. And then you have to keep the game going, even when there are arguments, which there will be. So along the way, they're learning, how to make something happen, how to get buy-in, executive function, focus, compromise, communication, just all the skills they need to be a functioning human being. And if like a 12-year-old ends up pitching to a 5-year-old, which would never, ever happen in adult organized sports, well, there's no glory in striking out a kindergartner, right? So the older kid throws the ball kind of gently, and the little kid taps it, and the older one goes, "My God, it's a home run!" Okay? And the little kid is so ecstatic, right? But the older one is too, because he's doing something new. He is learning how to empathize and how to be generous, how to be an adult. And that's the most teachable moment of all. When we take those experiences out of our kids' lives by always being with them to help them and high-five them, good job, good buddy, they get anxious because they don't see how much they can do, how much they can handle on their own. And we get anxious because we don't see it either. And so we're all feeling way more anxious than we have to. What can we do? Here's the deal. About 8 years ago, the social psychologist Jonathan Haidt and I and 2 others got together, and we started a nonprofit to make it easy normal, and legal for parents to let go and let grow, okay? In fact, we call our organization Let Grow. And because a collective problem, which is nobody letting their kids do anything, needs a collective solution, everybody doing it at the same time so you don't feel guilty or weird or judged, God forbid, judged, we came up with 2 school programs that are free and 1 new law. The law is this. The law says that it is not illegal to let your kid play at the park with a friend or walk to the store or do all sorts of things on their own. We call it the Reasonable Childhood Independence Law. And so far, as of last month, it has been passed in 9 states. Yes, right. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great law. And actually, they're voting on it in Florida tomorrow. Anyways, and then our 2 school programs are these. We would like schools to stay open after school, not just for chess and homework help and soccer and all these adult-run activities, but for actual mixed-age, no devices, free play. You put out some balls, some chalk, cardboard boxes, and there is an adult there crouching in the corner with an EpiPen. But but they don't solve the arguments. They don't organize the game. They're like a lifeguard, okay? And I know everyone thinks that kids just want to run home. They really want to be with their phones. They really want to be with each other. They really want to be having fun, playing, having adventures, maybe flirting. And if the only place they can do that without constant adult supervision is on their phones, of course that's where they go. But if you give them back a place that's free of phones, filled with kids, a swath of time, they love it. I've gone to these play clubs. It is so great. I consider them a wildlife sanctuary for childhood, right? Simple. Just keep the schools open for free play, right? The second thing we suggest is that schools do the Let Grow experience. And that's when teachers give kids the homework assignment that says, go home and do something new on your own with your parents' permission, but without your parents. You can climb a tree, walk the dog, make pancakes, doesn't matter, anything, depending on your age and your neighborhood, etc. And it's in just over 1,000 schools so far. And last year we heard of one kid who was 10 or 11, and he decided for his Let Grow experience, he would make dinner for his family. So he went to get the ingredients at the store, and he's shopping and he's getting everything, and then he can't find the hot sauce. And the idea of asking a clerk for help, going up to an adult like a moron, an idiot, he just felt so tiny, he couldn't do it. He ran out of the store. He literally left his cart and all the other groceries there, and he bolted. And then he went back in, and he talked to the clerk, and he got the hot sauce. And in one sense, it's just a simple errand, right? But in another sense, it's the hero's journey, right? Because he had been defeated and humiliated. He actually abandoned his quest, just like they say in those hero's journeys books. But then he went back in, and he did it himself. I did it myself, our childhood's magic words. I did it myself is the original anxiety buster. And in fact, if I ask you right now, and probably we'll talk about it later, to remember something that made you really proud of your own kid or your grandkid or your niece or your student or nephew, whatever, it's usually something like, you know, he was on an overnight last night and the other mom called to say he cleared the table. Really? Or we were on vacation and she got lost, but she found her own way back to the hotel. Or my kid took the cousins out last night and let the 5-year-old get a home run. We're most proud of our kids when they do something on their own. And our kids are most proud of themselves when they do something on their own. So the solution to the parent anxiety crisis and the kid anxiety crisis turns out to be the exact same thing. You got to pull apart those worlds again. You got to put the kid world separate from the parent world, put them back in balance. You got to let kids do something on their own in the big wide world, maybe without even tracking them or talking to them or texting them, just trusting them to do something on their own. And if you can do that, if you can let go, I can guarantee your kids are going to end up less anxious. Your kids are going to end up smarter. And your kids are going to feel really proud, but not as proud as you. Thank 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 you.
Such an amazing talk. Lenore is spectacular. I met her in person at this conference back in April. Fantastic. Really, really good stuff. I do want to give some shout outs to some people who mentioned where they're watching from. We have people from New York as well, someone from Buffalo. I saw someone from Indonesia. Hello and welcome. Thanks for hanging out at this time. Romania, Lagos, Nigeria. This is spectacular. We love seeing the wide range of people who show up to watch these talks with us, which is so great. And we appreciate you being here. So back to Lenore for a second. One thing that we do at TED is we actually have these wonderful TED membership events. So Lenore recently joined TED's Whitney Pennington Rogers at a recent TED membership conversation, and she actually dove into these topics that she was just talking about way deeper, way more in depth. And they had this conversation with our TED members. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested or something that you could learn, you can learn more about our TED membership on our site. So I'll have my wonderful colleague drop a link in the live chat so you can check that out if you're interested. It's kind of like this, but you actually get to hear the conversation and ask questions right to the actual speaker, which I feel like is going to be really beneficial for those who are thinking about having kids or maybe have their own kids and want to just dive a little bit deeper with people like Lenore. Like we have a whole slate of speakers that we bring onto that program, which is really fun and exciting. So I saw some folks in the chat dropping in some of their childhood experiences. We love that sort of interaction. So feel free to continue to share relevant and exciting stories about how these talks relate to you and your childhood or your children that you have now. That is always an exciting thing. Oh, we also have someone from Turkmenistan, which is amazing, super fun. So keep dropping in where you're from. Keep telling us how you are relating to these conversations and these topics. Our next one is sure to buzz up some conversation. It is Hajar Sharif, and it is how to use family dinner to teach politics, which I think is a really important conversation. And for those who are just joining, my name is Ikey. I'm the digital curator here at TED. This is a TED Talks watch party. We're hanging out. We're watching TED Talks. This whole segment is all about parenting. And I think it's going to be a really fantastic. We have one talk down, 3 to go. And I'll stop talking for now. We'll let Hajar join us here on video for her talk. And we'll jump right into it. And I'll be back afterwards to ask more questions and interact with you more. So without further ado, let's jump into talk number 2.
20 years ago, my family introduced a system called Friday Democracy Meetings. Every Friday at 7 p.m., my family came together for an official meeting to discuss the current family affairs. These meetings were facilitated by one of my parents, and we even had a note taker. These meetings had 2 rules. First, you are allowed to speak open and freely. Us kids were allowed to criticize our parents without that being considered disrespectful or rude. Second rule was the Chatham House rule, meaning whatever is said in the meeting stays in the meetings. The topics which were discussed in these meetings varied from one week to another. One week we'll talk about what food we wanted to eat, what time us kids should go to bed, and how to improve things as a family, while another meeting discussed pretty much events that happened at school and how to solve disputes between siblings, by which I mean real fights. At the end of each meeting, we'll reach decisions and agreements that will last at least until the next meeting. So you could say I was raised as a politician. By age of 6 or 7, I mastered politics. I was negotiating, compromising, building alliances with other political actors. And I even once tried to jeopardize the political process. These meetings sound very peaceful, civil, and democratic, right? But that was not always the case. Because of this open, free space to talk, discuss, and criticize, things sometimes got really heated. One meeting went really bad for me. I was about 10 years old at that time, and I've done something really horrible at school, which I'm not going to share today. But my brother decided to bring it up in the meeting. I could not defend myself, so I decided to withdraw from the meeting and boycott the whole system. I literally wrote an official letter and handed it to my dad announcing that I'm boycotting. I thought that if I stop attending these meetings anymore, the system will collapse. But my family continued with the meetings, and they've often made decisions that I disliked, but I could not challenge these decisions because I was not attending the meetings and thus had no right to go against it. Ironically, when I turned about 13 years old, I ended up attending one of these meetings again after I boycotted them for a long time. Because there was an issue that was affecting me only, and no other family member was bringing it up. The problem was that after each dinner, I was always the only one who was asked to wash the dishes while my brothers didn't have to do anything about it. I felt this was unjust, unfair, and discriminatory, so I wanted to discuss it in the meeting. As you know, the idea that it's a woman or a girl's role to do household work is a rule that has been carried out by many societies for so long. So in order for a 13-year-old me to challenge it, I needed a platform. In the meeting, my brothers argued that none of the other boys we know are washing the dishes, so why our family should be any different. But my parents agreed with me and decided that my brothers should assist me. However, they could not force them, so the problem continued. Seeing no solution to my problem, I decided to attend another meeting and propose a new system that would be fair to everyone. So I suggested instead of one person washing all the dishes used by all the family members, each family member should wash their own dishes. And as a gesture of good faith, I said, I'll wash the pots as well. This way, my brothers can no longer argue that it's not within their responsibility as boys or men to wash the dishes and clean after the family, because the system I proposed was about every member of the family cleaning after themselves and taking care of themselves. Everyone agreed to my proposal, and for years, that was our washing the dishes system. What I just shared with you is a family story, but it's pure politics. Every part of politics includes decision-making, and ideally, the process of decision-making should include people from different backgrounds, interests, opinions, gender, beliefs, race, ethnicity, age, and so on. And they should all have an equal opportunity to contribute to the decision-making process and influence the decisions that will affect their lives directly or indirectly. As such, I find it difficult to understand when I hear young people saying, I'm too young to engage in politics or to even hold a political opinion. Similarly, when I hear some women saying, politics is a dirty world I don't want to engage with, I'm worried that the idea of politics and political engagement has become so polarized in many parts of the world that ordinary people feel in order for them to participate in politics, they need to be outspoken activists. And that is not true. I want to ask these young people, women, and ordinary people in general, can you really afford not to be interested or not participate in politics? Politics is not only activism, it's awareness, it's keeping ourselves informed, it's caring for the facts. When it's possible, it's casting a vote. Politics is the tool through which we structure ourselves as groups and societies. Politics covers every aspect of life, and by not participating in it, you're literally allowing other people to decide on what you can eat, where, if you can have access to healthcare, free education, how much tax you pay, when you can retire, what is your pension. Other people are also deciding on whether your race and ethnicity is enough to consider you a criminal, or if your religion and nationality is enough to put you on a terrorist list. And if you still think you are a strong, independent human being unaffected by politics, then think twice. I'm speaking to you as a young woman from Libya, a country that is in the middle of a civil war. After more than 40 years of an authoritarian rule, it's not a place where political engagement by women and young people is possible nor encouraged. Almost all political dialogues that took place in the past few years, even those gathered by foreign powers, has been with only middle-aged men in the room. But in places with a broken political system like Libya, or in seemingly functioning places, including international organizations, the systems we have nowadays for political decision-making is not from the people for the people, but they have been established by the few for the few. And these few have been historically almost exclusively men, and they've produced laws, policies, mechanisms for political participation that is based on the opinions, beliefs, worldviews, dreams, aspiration of this one group of people while everyone else was kept out. After all, we've all heard some version of this sentence. What does a woman, let alone a young person who is brown, understands about politics? When you're young, and in many parts of the world, a woman, you often hear experienced politicians say, but you lack political experience. And when I hear that, I wonder what sort of experience are they referring to? The experience of corrupted political systems, or of waging wars? Or are they referring about the experience of putting the interests of the economic profits before those of the environment? Because if this is political experience, then yes, we as women and young people, have no political experience at all. Now, politicians might not be the only ones to blame, because ordinary people, and many too young people as well, don't care about politics. And even those who care, they don't know how to participate. This must change, and here's my proposal. We need to teach people at an early age about decision-making and how to be part of it. Every family is its own mini political system that is usually not democratic, because parents make decisions that affect all members of the family while the kids have very little to say. Similarly, politicians make decisions that affect the whole nation while the people have very little to say in them. We need to change this, and in order to achieve this change systematically, we need to teach people that political, national, and global affairs as relevant to them as personal and family affairs. So if we want to achieve this, my proposal and advice is try out the family democracy meeting system, because that will enable your kids to exercise their agency in decision-making from a very early age. Politics is about having conversations, including difficult conversations that leads to decisions. And in order to have a conversation, you need to participate, not sign off like I did when I was a kid and then learn the lesson the hard way and have to go back again. If you include your kids in family conversations, they will grow up and know how to participate in political conversations. And most importantly, they will help others engage. Thank you.
Such a strong and powerful talk. I love the connection between participation and politics, and doing this with your family is such a great way to start. So I do have a question for everyone in the chat. Did your parents talk politics and social issues with you when you were growing up? Or if you have your own kids, do you talk about these things with them? Or if you're planning to have kids, are you going to talk to them about these things? I think that's such an important thing to do, in my personal opinion. We didn't really talk much about it when I was growing up, but I can see the value. And I see some people in the chat have already chimed in. I see Rachel is saying that, starting them young is a great idea. I personally agree. I think that's fantastic. And even what like she was saying in the conversation, in the TED Talk, getting used to participating and having these tough conversations is just going to be beneficial for all involved, which I could not agree with more. So feel free to drop your thoughts and opinions in the chat. We'll see if we can talk through a few more of those before we move on to talk number 3. For those who maybe joined during that talk, this is the TED Talks watch party where we hang out, have a great conversation, watch a couple of TED Talks on a specific topic. Today, we're talking all about parenting, which is such an important topic, of course. Whether you are a parent, or you have, all those sorts of things are so important. So let's see. We have some people who have mentioned some things in the chat. Robin says, present your own original thoughts to be accountable. Love that. Let's see. We have someone here from South Korea. Welcome to the live stream. Let's see who else we have. Some people are saying, yes, I like that a lot. I saw someone mention something about how important media literacy is. I totally agree. And being able to have these tough conversations, all these things are super duper important. Let's see. Feel free to continue dropping your thoughts in the chat and communicating with each other. You don't have to just wait for me to read your comment out, but if you see someone else that says something that's interesting, feel free to engage with them as well. So we are halfway through our watch party, 2 talks down, 2 talks to go. And our next speaker is Joel Leon, and he's going to be talking about the beautiful and hard work of co-parenting, which I'm sure many folks can relate to, whether you are co-parenting with someone or if you're a child of people who are doing the co-parenting thing. And I think, this talk is going to be really valuable, regardless of if that's your situation or not. Let's see. Rachel says that they had some conversations, but not a lot of back and forth dialogue. Yeah, I totally get that. I feel like there's probably a lot of situations where people are talked at about politics, but maybe not having a conversation or a dialogue about politics. I feel like that's probably much more common than, is needed or wanted, probably. And something that maybe we can all work on as we move forward. So very interesting stuff. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here, everyone. It's very exciting to have you all here. Feel free to continue dropping in your thoughts and ideas on that last talk. We're going to move on to talk number 3 with Joel Leon, all about co-parenting. So without further ado, let's jump into that.
My name is Joel, and I'm a co-parent. So growing up, I never heard the term co-parent. I heard a lot of other things, though. For starters, absentee father, sperm donor. That's a good one. Deadbeat dad, and my personal favorite, baby daddy. Baby daddy, for those not in the know, refers to an individual who helps to conceive a child but does little else. Baby daddy is also someone who's not married by law to the mother of said child. Growing up, I thought co-parent was reserved primarily for white families that starred in Netflix primetime dramas. It still kind of does. But it wasn't used to explain the role of a parent, right? Either you had kids or you didn't. And no one in my social circles or at our dinner table was having complex conversations about the role fathers played in that conversation, right? A more balanced, open, loving approach to parenting was not something we were discussing within our social circles. A majority of the time, the fathers I knew of growing up were barely present or just completely non-existent. Co-parent wasn't a term I heard or saw where I grew up, where I came from. I come from the hood. That hood would be Crescent Avenue, 188th in the Bronx. And for one person, that's what's up. What's up? Appreciate that. For a lot of us in that hood, there was only one person we could already turn to for food, shelter, warmth, love, discipline: our mothers. My mother, who I playfully call Linda T, was my first example of real love and what showing up as a healthy co-parent looked like. She was a strong, determined single mother, a woman who would have benefited greatly from having a secure and stable partner as a co-parent. So I vowed, right, whenever I got married, my boo and I would be together forever. You know, we share the same bed and home. We sleep under the same covers. We argue at IKEA, normal stuff. My partner would feel seen and loved, and our children would grow up in a two-parent household. However, things rarely ever end up how we plan them. Our daughter, Lila, has never known a household with both of her parents living together under one roof. Her mother and I were never married. We dated on and off for several months before we found out she was pregnant. Up until then, my mother didn't even know she existed. I was ashamed, I was embarrassed, and at times I was suicidal. I was asking myself, what was I doing? Where was I going wrong? I never wanted the stigma or label of what some identified as the stereotypical Black father, right? So absentee, confrontational, combative, not present. It took a lot of work, time, energy, and effort for us to finally realize that maybe co-parenting for us didn't need to mean a shared household and wedding bells. That maybe, just maybe, the way we showed up as co-parents lay not only in the layered nuances of our partnership, but the capacity within our hearts to tend to a human that we helped create together. It would involve love in a nurturing and safe environment that would feed Lila long after we both left this earth. Fast forward 4 years, and Lila is now in pre-K. She loves gummies, and she says things like, "My heart is filled with love." She's the most loving, compassionate, empathetic human being I know. And the reason I get to tell you all of this is because she's back in the Bronx with her mother. You see, this is co-parenting. And in an ideal world, my mother would have had a co-parent too. She would have had support, someone to show up and give her a break, a time off. In an ideal world, every parent is a co-parent. In an ideal world, both parents share the weight of the work appropriately. Lila's mother and I have a schedule. Some days I leave work and pick Lila up from school. Some days I don't. Lila's mother gets to go rock climbing or study for the LSAT. And I get to stand in a room full of bold, dynamic, and powerful women and talk about dad stuff. So, it is work. It is beautifully hard work, dismantling the systems that would have us believe a woman's primary role is in the kitchen, tending to all things domestic, while the hapless dad fumbles all over himself whenever he has to spend a weekend alone with the kids. It is work that needs to happen right now. You see, far too often, what it seems like is when both parents are working, one person is typically tasked with organizing the household and keeping the home running. That person is typically a woman or someone who identifies as such. Far too often, those who identify as mothers and as women have to sacrifice their dreams in order to appease the standard. They have to sacrifice their dreams in order to ensure that motherhood takes precedence over all else. And I'm not here to say that it doesn't, but what I am here to say is, as equal partners and co-parents, it is our duty to ensure that our co-parenting partners don't have to put their passions, their pursuits, and their dreams to the back burner just because we're too self-absorbed to show up as allies. Co-parenting makes this space possible for everybody. As a co-parent, the time I've gone to share and spend with Lila is time I appreciate, the time that has allowed me to be fully present for my child, all right? Removing the notion that the emotional labor required to raise a child is a woman's work. As a co-parent, Lila and I have built snowmen, we've played with acorns, we've rapped to the soundtrack of Moana, I know you have too. She sat with me while I've led workshops at Columbia University when I talk about the intersections of poetry, hip hop, and theater. We get to talk about her emotions and her feelings because we have exclusive time together. And that time is planned time. It's organized around not just my schedule, but her mother's. Both of us, as co-parents, have unique parenting styles. And we may argue at times, but what we can always agree on is how to raise a human, our human. I will never fully understand or comprehend what it means to hold a child in my body for 10 months. I will never be able to understand the trials and tribulations of breastfeeding, the work that it takes, the emotional, physical, psychological, and emotional toll that carrying a human can have on the female body. What co-parenting does is say, we can create balance, a more balanced home and work life for everyone involved. Co-parenting says that while parenting may involve sacrifices, yes, the weight of that sacrifice is not solely resting on one parent alone. No matter your relational dynamic, no matter how you identify as a human being, he, she, they, ze, co-parenting says we can create space and equity, better communication, empathy. I hear you, I see you. How can I show up for you in ways that benefits our family? My goal. I want more fathers to embrace co-parenting as a model for a better tomorrow, a better today for ourselves, for our co-parenting partners, for our families, for our community. I want more fathers talking about fatherhood openly, candidly, honestly, lovingly, right? I want more people to recognize that Black fathers in particular are more than the court system, more than child support, and more what the media might portray us to be. Our role as fathers, our role as parents, our value as parents is not dependent on the zeros at the ends of our checks, but the capacity within our hearts to show up for our families, for the people we love, for our little ones. Being a father is not only a responsibility, it's an opportunity. This is for Dwayne, this is for Kareem, Buck Drayton, this is for Biggs, this is for Bula, this is for Tyron, this is for all the Black fathers who were showing up on a day-to-day basis. This is for Charles Lorenzo Daniels, my father, who didn't have the language or the tools to show up in the ways that he wanted to. Thank you. My name is Joel. Hi, Bria. Hi, West. Ashe.
An extremely powerful talk there. That was Joel Leone talking about the beauty and hard work of co-parenting. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I like that this conversation that he's bringing to the table is a lot about kind of like showing up and being there, kind of investing in yourself so that you can help the future lives of the children that you have. And that theme is something that we take really seriously here at TED. We actually have a whole conference that is focused on the future you, kind of all sorts of talks and conversations that help you become the best version of you, whether that's at work or at home, in your job, with your friends and family, all sorts of things. And that conference is actually coming up very soon in November 9th, 10th, and 11th in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you're curious about a conference all about improving yourself, helping you become the best version of yourself in every facet of your life, TED Next is going to be something that you might be interested in checking out. I'll have my wonderful colleague drop a link that you can check out more details. We currently have an exclusive rate that's going to be there until October 17th. And you'll be able to hear from people you might recognize from YouTube, like Michelle Carre from Challenge Accepted, Cody Sanchez. We also will have creators like Tim Chusano. You might know him from TikTok. We have all sorts of amazing people. That's just a handful. We'll have over 40 speakers talking about amazing topics and conversations that are related to things that excuse me, will be incredibly impactful for just about anyone. So be sure to check it out, explore it. We love going down to Atlanta. It's such a wonderful time, such a wonderful space. Let us know in the chat if you have any specific questions about that. We can be able to help you out. So for those who maybe joined during that talk or during that little spiel just now, this is a TED Talks watch party where we hang out, watch some TED Talks. This watch party is all about parenting. We have 3 talks down, 1 to go, not 3 to go, 1 to go. The last talk is going to be from Becky Kennedy, and it's the single most important parenting strategy This talk is awesome. Dr. Becky Kennedy is spectacular, just like all these other speakers. Another thing I should mention, you'll be able to find all these talks right here on YouTube if you search their name, or you could also, of course, go to TED.com to find these talks. And then this playback of this actual live stream will also be available on demand if you want to gather a bunch of friends and watch together and discuss. So without further ado, why don't we jump into the last talk? I'll come back afterwards and give a few more updates, and we can chat a little bit about some of the strategy that Dr. Becky is suggesting. Feel free to drop any questions or comments in the live chat, and we will get going here with our last talk of the watch party. Here we go.
All right, quick poll. Raise your hand if you have a relationship in your life that's meaningful to you. Okay, I assumed, but always good to check our assumptions. I'm saying this because while I'll be focusing today on a parent-child relationship, please know that everything I'm talking about is applicable to any meaningful relationship. So with that in mind, let's jump in. So it's Sunday night. I'm in my kitchen. I just finished cooking dinner for my family, and I am on edge. I mean, I'm exhausted. I haven't been sleeping well. I'm anxious about the upcoming work week. I'm overwhelmed by all the items on my unfinished to-do list. And then my son walks into the kitchen. He looks at the table and whines, "Chicken again? Disgusting." And that's it. I snap. I look at him and I yell, "What is wrong with you? Can you be grateful for one thing in your life?" And things get worse from there. He screams, "I hate you." He runs out of the room and he slams his bedroom door. And now my self-loathing session begins as I say to myself, what is wrong with me? I've messed up my kid forever. Well, if you're a parent, you've probably felt that pain. For me, it comes with an extra layer of shame. I mean, I'm a clinical psychologist, and my specialty is helping people become better parents. And yet, this is true as well. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. Mistakes and struggles, they come with the job, but no one tells us what to do next. Do we just move on? Kind of just pretend the whole thing never happened? Or if I say something, what are the words? Well, for years, as a clinical psychologist in private practice, I saw client after client struggle with this question. And now, as the creator of the parenting content and community platform Good Inside, I see millions of parents around the globe struggle with this issue. All parents yell. No one knows what to do next. Well, I'm determined to fill this gap. After all, there's almost nothing within our interpersonal relationships that can have as much impact as repair. Whenever a parent asks me, what one parenting strategy should I focus on? I always say the same thing: get good at repair. So what is repair? Repair is the act of going back to a moment of disconnection, taking responsibility for your behavior, and acknowledging the impact it had on another. And I want to differentiate a repair from an apology, because one apology often looks to shut a conversation down. Hey, I'm sorry I yelled. Can we move on now? A good repair opens one up. And if you think about what it means to get good at repair, there's so much baked in realism and hope and possibility. Repair assumes there's been a rupture. So to repair, you have to mess up or fall short of someone else's expectations, which means the next time I snap at my kid or my husband or my work colleague, instead of berating myself like I did that night in the kitchen, I try to remind myself I'm focusing on getting good at repair. Step one is rupture. Check that off. I crushed it. Step two is repair. I can do this. I'm actually right on track. So let's get back to my example. I'm in the kitchen, my son is in his room. Well, what will happen if I don't repair? That's really important to understand and helps us make a decision about what to do next. Well, here are the facts. My son is alone, overwhelmed, and in a state of distress because, let's face it, his mom just became scary mom. And now he has to figure out a way to get back to feeling safe and secure. And if I don't go help him do that through making a repair, he has to rely on one of the only coping mechanisms he has at his own disposal: self-blame. Self-blame sounds like this: something's wrong with me. I'm unlovable. I make bad things happen. Ronald Fairbairn may have said it best when he wrote that for kids, it is better to be a sinner in a world ruled by God than to live in a world ruled by the devil. In other words, it's actually adaptive for a child to internalize badness and fault, because at least then they can hold on to the idea that their parents and the world around them is safe and good. And while self-blame works for us in childhood, we all know it works against us in adulthood. Something's wrong with me. I make bad things happen. I'm unlovable. These are the core fears of so many adults. But really, we see here, they are actually the childhood stories we wrote when we were left alone following distressing events that went unrepaired. Plus, adults with self-blame are vulnerable to depression, anxiety, deep feelings of worthlessness, none of which we want for our kids. And we can do better. And it doesn't mean we have to be perfect. When you repair, you go further than removing a child's story of self-blame. You get to add in all the elements that were missing in the first place: safety, connection, coherence, love, goodness. It's as if you're saying to a child, I will not let this chapter of your life end in self-blame. Yes, this chapter will still contain the event of yelling, but I can ensure this chapter has a different ending, and therefore a different title and theme and lesson learned. We know that memory is original events combined with every other time you've remembered that event. This is why therapy is helpful, right? When you remember painful experiences from your past within a safer and more connected relationship, the event remains, but your story of the event, it changes. And then you change. With repair, we effectively change the past. So let's write a better story. Let's learn how to repair. Step 1, repair with yourself. That's right. I mean, you can't offer compassion or groundedness or understanding to someone else before you access those qualities within yourself. Self-repair means separating your identity, who you are, from your behavior, what you did. For me, it means telling myself 2 things are true. I'm not proud of my latest behavior, and my latest behavior doesn't define me. Even as I struggle on the outside, I remain good inside. I can then start to see that I'm a good parent, identity, who was having a hard time, behavior, and no, this doesn't let me off the hook. This is precisely what leaves me on the hook for change. Because now that I've replaced my spiral with groundedness, I can actually use my energy toward thinking about what I want to do differently the next time. Oh, and I can now use my energy to go repair with my son. Step 2, repair with your child. There's no exact formula. I often think about 3 elements. Name what happened, take responsibility, state what you would do differently the next time. It could come together like this. Hey, I keep thinking about what happened the other night in the kitchen. I'm sorry I yelled. I'm sure that felt scary, and it wasn't your fault. I'm working on staying calm, even when I'm frustrated. A 15-second intervention can have a lifelong lifelong impact. I've replaced my child's story of self-blame with a story of self-trust and safety and connection. I mean, what a massive upgrade. And to give a little more clarity around how to repair, I want to share a few examples of what I call not repair, which are things that come more naturally to most of us, definitely me included. Hey, I'm sorry I yelled at you in the kitchen, but if you wouldn't have complained about dinner, it wouldn't have happened. Been there, okay? Or, you really need to be grateful for things in your life, like a home-cooked meal. Then you won't get yelled at. Not only do these interventions fail at the goal of reconnection, they also insinuate that your child caused your reaction, which simply isn't true and isn't a model of emotion regulation we want to pass on to the next generation. So let's say we've all resisted the "it was your fault anyway" not repairs, and have instead prioritized a repair that allows us to reconnect. What might the impact be? What might that look like in adulthood? My adult child won't spiral in self-blame when they make a mistake and won't take on blame for someone else's mistake. My adult child will know how to take responsibility for their behavior because you've modeled how to take responsibility for yours. Repairing with a child today sets the stage for these critical adult relationship patterns. Plus, it gets better. Now that I've reconnected with my son, I can do something really impactful. I can teach him a skill he didn't have in the first place, which is how kids actually change their behavior. So maybe the next day I say, you're not always going to like what I make for dinner. Instead of saying, that's disgusting, I wonder if you could say, not my favorite. Now I'm teaching him how to regulate his understandable disappointment and communicate effectively and respectfully with another person. That never would have happened if instead I had been blaming him for my reaction. So here's the point where you might have a lingering concern. Maybe you're thinking, I have a feeling my kid's older than your kid. I think it's too late. Or, I've done a lot worse than you did in the kitchen. Maybe it's too late. Well, I mean this. If you have only one takeaway from this talk, please let this be it. It is not too late. It is never too late. How do I know? Well, imagine right after this, you get a call from one of your parents. And if neither of your parents are alive, imagine finding and opening a letter you hadn't seen until that moment. Okay, walk through this with me. Here's the call. Hey, I know this sounds out of the blue, but I've been thinking a lot about your childhood. And I think there were a lot of moments that felt really bad to you. And you were right to feel that way. Those moments weren't your fault. They were times when I was struggling, and if I could have gone back, I would have stepped aside. I would have calmed myself down and then found you to help you with whatever you were struggling with. I'm sorry. And if you're ever willing to talk to me about any of those moments, I'll listen. I won't listen to have a rebuttal. I'll listen to understand. I love you. I don't know many adults who don't have a fairly visceral reaction to that exercise. I often hear, why am I crying? Or, listen, that wouldn't change everything, but it might change some things. Well, I definitely do not special in math, but here's something I know with certainty. If you have a child, that child is younger than you are. Always true. The story of their life is shorter and even more amenable to editing. So if that imagined exercise had an impact on you, imagine the impact an actual repair will have on your child. See, I told you, it's never too late. Thank you.
A very, very good talk right there. Dr. Becky Kennedy, Fantastic. I don't know about you, but that part at the end where she's asking you to envision a parent or someone giving you a call definitely got me in my feels. Let me know. I'll leave you with one question before we sign off here. What's one tip that Dr. Becky gave that you think you can use in your life, either as a parent or in another relationship? Drop it in the comments, talk amongst yourselves. I think this is such a great talk to reflect on, and especially important when we're thinking about how to cultivate and strengthen our relationships with our children, of course, but also with each other. And the sentiment of like, it's never too late to repair, 10 out of 10. Absolutely love it. So for those who maybe came in during that last talk, this is the TED Talks watch party. We hang out, we chat about the talks. We have 4 amazing talks on a specific topic. Today was all about parenting. And if you want more of Dr. Becky, we do have a rethinking episode with Adam Grant, which is from our TED Audio Collective, our podcast network. So if you want that, definitely check it out. She goes even more in depth and has more examples on her ideas of repair and her work. So I actually love that. I see that Deb in the comment section says, I totally agree. It's never too late. I'm so with you. That's such a powerful sentiment to keep in mind, especially when dealing with your kids or your parents, right? Or any relationship, right? It all starts with that repair, as Becky Kennedy is saying. Absolutely wonderful. One thing I would do like to ask toward the end of these watch parties is, what other topic areas would you be interested in having watch parties on? We do these pretty regularly, and we love to hear from people as well on what kind of types of TED Talks they'd be most interested in hearing. So be sure to drop that in or leave a comment on this video after we're done about other areas you'd be interested in hearing about. Let's see. We have some other comments from people coming in. Rachel says the ending always gets me. Yep, I'm right there with you, Rachel. It gets me too. Someone else says acknowledging people's feelings before responding is so important. Couldn't say it better myself. Absolutely spectacular. These are all really great insights, and hopefully things that you can take with you into the rest of your day, the rest of your weekend, the rest of your year in life, etc. Someone says it's never too late to repair a fractured relationship. Rosa says, to never blame your child for your reaction. Yeah, that's a great tip, Rosa. Fantastic. Someone also says meditation. I feel like this one struck a chord with some people. We're getting a bunch of great answers. So thank you for participating and sharing your feelings on Dr. Becky's talk, and for hanging out and watching all these talks with us today. This is fantastic. I hope you are enjoying this format. We've done, like I mentioned, a bunch of these, and we are looking to do more. So make sure to show some love and drop things in the chat and in the comments after when we're done, so we can make sure to continue doing these watch parties and hanging out and having a great time. A great way to kind of unplug from work a little bit on a Friday afternoon and watch some good old TED Talks, in my opinion. So without further ado, that is more or less my time. Thank you for joining. Thank you for hanging out. My name is Ikey Ajavon. I'm the digital curator here at TED. Be sure to keep your eye out on the TED YouTube channel for more exciting live programming as we continue throughout this year. And if you're interested in checking out TED Talks in person, which I think I saw someone say earlier is electric and really fun, I agree. It is fantastic to see a TED Talk in person. Be sure to check out our upcoming conference, TED Next in Atlanta, Georgia, November 9th through 11th. So without further ado, thank you for being here. Super stoked to have you. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a fantastic weekend.